I'm currently in the tavern at the beginning of the game in Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. I was originally gonna go to a bar in Toussaint from the Blood and Wine DLC, but those bars were way too crowded. So I came here, and I had this funky looking white-haired dude, and he challenged me to a game of Gwent. Everyone knows that I am the best at Gwent, and definitely not the worst player who can't even beat the tutorial NPC. So I kicked his ass, and I got his journal, and it was full of these monster entries. I read through them, thought that, world needed to hear about this, stay a little bit safer, so I'm here. I'm here to let the world know. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about all the different bestiary monsters. I compressed this number down to this number, which was pretty cool on my part. And I'm going to be going category by category. I didn't change the categories or anything. I just condensed the creatures down into one because there were variants that was just the same version but a little bit stronger, so I just put them in the same category as other ones. But don't worry, I'll be explaining what makes each creature go in its category. And if you need to know where certain creatures are, I've got chapters below. This video took way too long to make because the first time I recorded the footage, all of it corrupted. So I had to re-record all this again, which was awesome. Yeah, let's just go. Let's just go in. Go right now. Go, 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 go. Real quick, I thought this would be a funny story to share. I'll put this image up. This was me the other day. I was going to get some groceries, and this guy came up to me, and he said, "You know, you kind of look like Ringo from the Beatles." And I went, "Oh, thanks." And then internally I was like, "Fuck, I do look like Ringo from the Beatles," which was awful, but amazing at the same time. I love the Beatles. They're awesome. And then I have this image of me, which is me in a lab coat and the same shirt, and it really makes me look like Dr. Doofenshmirtz. And I'm not sure how I like that, but apparently I rock that shirt. It really makes me look like celebrities. And yes, Doofenshmirtz is a celebrity in my eyes. Back to the video. Starting out with the beast category, we've got 9 of these. We've got the bear. It's based on a bear, and the variants include the black bear, polar bear, cave bear, and the bear cub. Then we have the 3 little pigs, based on the fairy tale 3 Little Pigs, and they're just a group of pigs. That's all they are. Then there's the big bad wolf, based on also the fairy tale with the 3 little pigs, or Little Red Riding Hood. Technically, it's not a cursed one and is weak to beast oil, making it a beast. Then the panther, which is based on a panther. The beast of Beauclair, which is actually a vampire, but you find that out later, so it's originally classified as a beast, and is most likely based on the beast of Gévaudan, a man-eating creature who killed a lot of people. Then we have wild boars. They're based on real-life wild boars. Wolves, which are just untamed dogs, the original dog. And wargs, which are bigger wolves and a little bit tougher, and they're based on J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, and they're meant to be the orcs version of a horse, but a little bit more metal, you know? Hello, it's me. I forgot that dogs were also in the bestiary, so here they are. It's the dog. It's just a dog. And its variant is the wild dog. It's wild and more dog. Alright, continue. Goodbye. Looking at the cursed ones, they're usually categorized as a cursed human or humanoid, but it's not a human all the time. We're going to start off with one of the cursed ones that aren't actually human, the Archspore, which is fertilized by the blood of people who died, usually where murders happened or where a ritual has happened. And it's probably just based on a Venus flytrap, but they added a tentacle to it, and it also spits acid. Then we have berserkers or werebears. It usually gets passed down in your family via lineage, or if you get cursed by someone, and it turns you into a bear when you get really angry. You don't really have any control over it or any memories of what happens afterwards either. and you also heal really quickly and are really strong. And the only way you can tell a difference between a berserker and a normal bear is by looking at their teeth and their tongue. As for what it's based on, I think it's most likely just based on real life, like Norse berserkers. Basically, they'd be these people who would have these like battle axes and they'd run into battle. And usually when you think of them as these big tough guys who have like a bear pelt on. So they probably thought, hey, what if we just put bear pelts, but like they are the bear pelt. Then we got botchlings. They resemble a deformed fetus, and they're pretty small, you know, size of a baby, and are created from a unwantedness. So like the parents really don't want that kid, and so they don't name it, and they like bury it somewhere far away because they don't want anyone to know it ever existed, and that makes a botchling. And they prey on pregnant women by sucking their life force out of them, usually from under a bed. So if you're pregnant, check your beds, you know? Don't want a botchling. And it's inspired by some Slavic mythology. The evil spirit would arise from like a burial of a stillborn child, and it would transform then into a friendly spirit after being buried properly, much like the lubberkin. And speaking of the lubberkin, we got the lubberkin now. It's similar to the botchling, but it's the purified version of it, being named and then buried under the family estate that they belong to. And it also belongs to the same mythology as the botchling. Then we have the Toad Prince, a giant toad that spits acid and was a prince that got turned into a toad, except he's a really big toad and has a few medical problems you should probably check out. But based on the fairy tale where a girl or guy kisses a frog and then turns into either a prince or a princess, and then they become rich, live happily ever after, that sort of thing. But that doesn't happen. You kill the toad. That's just how it is. And then we have the werewolves, and the werewolves are usually a person who gets cursed or handed down in the generations, and they turn into a half man, half wolf, gaining the best qualities of both. So intellect of man, strength and viciousness of wolf, and they don't usually remember what happens afterwards, but they're still able to like speak and stuff. But you know, if you wake up in a room filled with blood, I think you're gonna know what happened. And the variants include Ulfhedin and Voref, which are just named wolves that you killed in a contract. And the oldest tale, like that has been like written down and known, that included a werewolf was the Epic of Gilgamesh, where he finds this lady and she's been turning all her exes into wolves. And been quite a few. There's been a lot of them actually. And I really don't think that's the best way to solve, you know, a relationship. So you should just leave, not be that petty. But you know, if I had power, if I had transformation powers, I'd probably do that to people too. Actually, I take that back. I would do that to people. Draconoids. Draconoids are just anything that depicts the description of a wyvern. So, you know, 2 back legs, wings, but no front legs, and it looks like a dragon, but is not, because it's a wyvern. We're gonna start with the basilisk and the cockatrice, which are both actually based off of the same thing. They're bird-like wyverns, and they have in-game stories where their breath turns people to stone. They don't actually, but it's a reference to what they do in mythology. And the first depiction of a basilisk and cockatrice is from Pliny the Elder's Natural History, which is written in like 79 AD in the Roman Empire. And he describes a creature resembling a snake that can kill from just a look at people. And it also kind of looks like a bird. And the variant of the basilisk is the silver basilisk, which is silver. And it was hunted to almost extinction because it looked silver. So they were like, it's a good money maker. Then we have the cockatrice, which again is based off of the same thing, and they're very synonymous with each other because they're technically the same thing, but their names slightly mean different things. And the variants include the Shrieker, which has a slightly different head and looks more like a chicken. Forktails. I don't really know what this is, so I'm just going to assume that it's based off of a lesser wyvern. And the variant includes the Dragon of Firesdale, which is not a dragon and is just a forktail. Then we have Slizzards. Slizzards, despite the appearance, aren't actually blind. These guys ain't blind. Despite having no eyes, they can actually see perfectly fine. And supposedly they've been living in caves for a while, which is why they have no eyes. But they don't hunt based on echolocation, they hunt on sight. So you'd think that if they did have eyes, they'd be really weak eyes. That would be pretty like fucked over. But then that would mean if they looked at like sunlight or anything, they'd be like fucking blinded. But no, they can see perfectly fine, and I think it's more of a design issue than anything else. And the variant is the Slizzard Matriarch, which is just a female Slizzard that had just laid its eggs and is very angry now. And the only mention of anything that the Slizzard was based about is not from The Witcher 3, it's actually from the Witcher pen and paper game, where it looks very similar to a pterosaur. Then we got the wyvern. The whole point of this whole category, term wyvern comes from the Latin word of vipera, which means viper, and is depicted as a snake with wings and 2 back legs, with the first appearance in around 750 AD, with the Dacian soldiers having banners of wyverns. The variants include the royal wyvern, and they don't breathe fire and are more venomous than anything, which makes more sense because you shouldn't be able to breathe fire. It's not how real life works. But you can be very venomous. Elementa. They're entities that live in the elemental planes, or they live in the material plane, which is our world, and they're fueled by elemental power. So I'm going to start off with the Djinn. It's an air spirit. It can grant any wish as long as you've captured it, and its wishes can only be undone by other Djinns or the same Djinn. And Djinns, or genies, depending on where you're from, first appeared in the fiction called 1001 Nights, which has many stories including Aladdin and the Marvelous Lamp, or, you know, just Aladdin, Disney. Aladdin, Will Smith, and The Tale of the Fisherman and the Djinn, which is about Djinns. Then we got the Earth Elemental. It's a golem, basically. It's made out of mud, clay, stone, a bunch of other things mixed together and powered by magic. Its variants include the Therazane, which is just a more powerful named variant of a normal Earth Elemental. And all elementals are actually based on the work of Paracelsus, who made a book on nymphs, pygmies, and other creatures, including a bunch of the elementals. Then we have the Fire Elemental, which is described as being made in complicated magical rituals, and doesn't actually explain what it's made out of, but I'm going to assume that it's also just powered by magic and isn't an actual elemental and not just a golem. So I don't know. Then we have the Ice Elemental, which is just frozen water animated by magic. Then we have the Golem, which seems to look pretty similar to the Fire Elemental, which is why I think the Fire Elemental isn't just an actual elemental, not just a golem. But the normal golem doesn't have the element part to it, and it's just fueled by magic itself. And another golem is actually Moreau's Golem, which is Moreau's Golem. He made it. It's Moreau's. Duh. And the first appearance of a golem is from Judaism, where it's an unformed body and it has no soul in it, but it's made out of earth. It's got no soul in it, but it's ready to have a soul in it. Then we have the Gargoyle, which is just a stone or marble statue carved out to what you want it to look like, and then infused with magic to come to life. And it usually has the blood of lava in it as well. And one of the first recorded gargoyles was actually from not medieval times, but instead from Greek times, from Athens. And it was that of a lion mask. But most gargoyles that we know of were made during the 10th to 15th centuries. And the Hound of the Wild Hunt. They are believed to have been born from magic ice crystals in like different land, and were then tamed by the Wild Hunt in order to be used as attack dogs. And the variants include the Iparian Phantom, which is just a stray from the Wild Hunt. And I'd actually say it's probably weaker because it's a stray, you know? And as the Wild Hunt is based on groups of dead Norse soldiers that like wander for war, I would have to assume that the hounds of the Wild Hunt are based on animals that they kept at the time, or some form of hellhound that, like, you know, reap souls and stuff. Then we have pixies. They're magic creatures that are created to protect something and are very aggressive, and by design they're made to fight until they literally can't anymore. And in this case they're based on British and Welsh folklore of pixies being underground creatures that are very childlike and like to play pranks. Hybrids. They're a combination of creatures. So you take a little bit of creature A, a little bit of creature B, mix them together, you got a hybrid. We're gonna start with the griffin. Its body, legs, and tail are that of a lion, and the head, wings, and talons are that of an eagle. Its variants include the royal griffin, which is larger, and the arch griffin, which is able to spit acid, and a Pinnicus, which is a named archwyvern that killed a bunch of people. And they come from Egyptian and Iranian art circa around 3300 BCE, and they were named the Shirdal. And we then translated a bunch of times. Now we call them griffins. Then we got harpies. They are bird-like people who eat corpses, but will also kill for said corpses. They're similar to crows, as they like stealing the very shiny things, and won't say no to some roadkill. The variant is the Arinia, which is just a more pale version, and they appear in Greek and Roman mythology, and my personal favorite appearance is from the Odyssey. Then we have sirens. They're very similar to mer people in like myths, where they try and lure you and then kill you, except the difference between mer people and sirens is they have wings, so after you get close enough, they'll just fly onto your boat and then kill you anyway. So can't really get away. And the variants include the Echidnae, Melusine, and Lamia. And in the same order, the Echidnae are just stronger breeds. Melusine is just an Echidnae that is very old and powerful and had a cult worship it for a little bit. And the Lamia are much more well known in culture today. They're found in deserts, and they have the lower half of a snake instead of having like wings and stuff. But they're based on the sirens from the Odyssey. Go read it. It's a good book. It's really good. They're making a movie about it, actually. Succubus. Everyone knows about succubi. What's to say? They're technically half people, half devil, and they're able to woo anyone. And they basically just look like a normal person in this game, but with like horns, but they're able to like hide them with magic. And they don't really go out of their way to kill anyone, but will feed off of your lust, and usually do so at the expense of the victim. If you got like a good succubus, then she will suck you dry and then just leave you without killing you. But most succubus end up taking a little bit too far and kill you in the process, so they get hunted down. One of note is Salma the prostitute, which you can find in Novigrad at Crippled Kate's brothel, and is wanted by the Temple Guard. And the earliest writings of succubi are from Mesopotamia in like 2400 BCE, and were depicted as Lilu, Lilithu, or Lilith, and would seduce people in their dreams. Now we have Insectoids. Despite the category name, it also includes spiders and crabs, which aren't insects, but we'll roll with it because that's what the game is telling us. I'm gonna start with Araxae. It's a spider-like crab that is poisonous and resembles an orchid for its head, and a little bit of hermit crab in there too for its little shell at the back. And the variants include the armored Araxae, which has grown thick carapace to cover its soft spots, the venomous Araxae, which is extremely poisonous but lacks a back cover, and Harisi, which was also a venomous Araxae and lived in an abandoned mine. And I can only assume that these were based on a mix of an orchid mouth, a spider body, and a little bit of hermit crab for the back shell. Then we got arachnomorphs. They're large spiders. They really like dark areas. They like caves a lot. They like dark forests a lot. And it's just a big spider. Then we have Indraga warriors, which are ant scorpion-like creatures. And the variants are the Indraga drones, which are males and have bigger tails that can actually shoot poison quills at people. And they also act as food for the hive once they have fertilized other eggs. And the other is the Indraga warrior, which have a really long tail and are able to whip you and poison you with said tail. And they're probably based on the Endriago from Spanish novel Amadi de Gala, which is a chimera creature who possessed a lizard-like shape, hardened shell, long talons, and a scorpion tail. Then we have the giant centipedes. They are a giant centipede, but taken literally, so they're actually giant. And probably a little bit of quality from the garden eel in the way that they bury themselves. And the variant is the pale widow, which lives in underground layers and is pale, crazy, haha, and is also armored, but also quicker. Then there's Kikimor warriors, which have ant-like insect colonies that are very quick and numerous, but they're very easy to kill. The variant is the Kikimor warrior, which is a lot slower and more armored, but they also spit venom and are also able to command hordes of the Kikimor warriors. And strangely, the mythology for this creature is based on Kikimoras, which were human-like creatures with many different animal parts to them and were peaceful but mischievous. And how they got from this to this, I don't understand, but we'll go with it. And then there's sand crabs. They jump out the ground like the giant centipede, but they have 4 legs and a set of wings, but they never actually use the wings. And they also have a large horn on their head, resembling a beetle. And I'm going to assume that it's just a mix of a rhino beetle and a scarab, potentially like a cricket in there too. I don't know. Necrophages. They're monsters that inhabit haunted cemeteries or battlefields, and they usually eat corpses. They also sometimes make their own habitat, so it's pretty loose, the categorization for it. But we're gonna go with the ghoul first. They look like a human and a dog mixed together. They kind of look like those backroom dogs, you know what I mean? And they usually stay around corpses, and they appear in 1001 Nights, and were tricksters and flesh eaters in that one. Then we have all ghouls, which are just bigger, stronger, and more intelligent ghouls, otherwise known as the player leveled up too much, and so now ghouls are too easy, so we have to give them all ghouls. I have no idea what they're based on, so I'm just going to assume that they just had to come up with a stronger creature, and so they put all in front of it. And it reminds me of just Ra's al Ghul from Batman, this guy. And if you just got rid of Ra's, then it'd just be Al Ghul, same as this guy. Then we have drowners. They resemble bloated human corpses, but aren't actually humans at all. And the variants are the drowned dead, which is just more dangerous, and the mucknixer, which looks slightly different. I'm gonna be honest, I couldn't actually find anything about this dude. I mean, I found this one Reddit thread, I don't remember where exactly it was, but they were talking about it being like an underwater protector, but these assholes are just like Slav squatting on the beach half the time. Like, look at this. They're like just sitting there. They don't do anything. They ain't protecting shit. So I'm just gonna assume that they're based on drowned corpses. That's it. Then we have the water hag. They're very similar to drowners, but they look more like like an old woman, and they can speak English. And in some English stories, there's talk of water hags that would drag children into the water if they got too close. and the variant is Abaya, which is a powerful water hag, and it would lead a group of drowners. And then there's also the bilge hag, which I think is actually just the same as the water hag, but different localized name for those Europeans out there. Then we got the grave hag. It's basically the same as the water hag, but they live in graveyards and they eat the corpses in the graveyards. But they do a strange thing where when they run out of corpses, they go to the local town and then kill the people there, bury them in the grave, wait a while for their corpse to be ripe for the picking, and they eat those corpses. And one notable one is Morntart, which was a more powerful grave hag that kidnapped and ate wandering children because it got a taste for children. And I've no really clue what they're based on, so I'm just going to assume that it's based on the water hag, but for graves. So instead of stay away from that water, it's stay away from those graves. Then we have foglets. They are also called Tangalores, and they hide in the fog, but they can also create fog if needed. And they kind of look like small goblins. And one notable foglet was the Ignis Fatuus, which is just a really old foglet, and they're most likely based on the European legends of monsters who would snatch people up in the fog, and then they'd never appear again. Then we have the Rot Fiend, which kind of just looks like a normal human corpse. Very silly. And the variants are the Scurver, which is larger, and when close to death, shoot their spines out, and they're bone spines, not needles. And the Devourer, which is usually female in the last few games, but was decided to be a male in this game for some reason, and is based on the Baba Yaga. Why it looks like this in this game, I have no idea. And as for what it's based on, I also have no idea. I literally couldn't find anything about it. So I'm just going to tell you some interesting corpse explosion facts. If you get a casket and not have any room for it, so like if you seal everything, no gaps, no air leakage, sometimes when the body decomposes, it lets out enough gases to build pressure, and it'll actually cause an explosion in the casket. This would usually happen in like stone caskets. It doesn't really happen with wood anymore because wood's very breathable material. And another way is if you eat and drink certain things, your stomach can ferment it enough. Obviously, when you're alive, it can't ferment it because, you know, it goes through you. But if you die after eating these things, it'll ferment in you enough to where if they don't take it out of your stomach, it'll actually explode your stomach. There's some cool facts for you. Lastly, for this section, we have the Wight, which looks like a mummified human, and it feeds on life essence, not blood. Feeds on life essence. So imagine it's basically just your soul. They feed on your soul, and when they kill another person, they can actually turn them into a Wight as well, and then they have dominance over that Wight, so they're able to control it. So they look the same, but some of them are able to control other Wights, and that's kind of why they go in groups. And then the variant is the Spotted Wight, which was thought to be extinct because they're really dangerous, but you find one and they are just a normal Wight, but they got blotches all over them. So they got a bit of a skin issue going on. And the term Wight can usually refer to an undead creature or someone brought back to life. So that's what it's based on. Ogoroids. No, it's not an STD. It's actually a category that encompasses anything that looks like an ogre. I'm going to start with the Cyclops. It's very big in size. Basically a giant, but with one eye, square in the forehead. And they hate humans, probably because everyone tries to kill them. But one notable one is Old Speartip, which is no different from normal Cyclopses. Cyclopses? Cyclopsi. Cyclopi. But was used by the Witcher school of the wolf as a trial, and whoever came out of his cave would pass the trial, and if you didn't pass the trial, you die. And the first appearance of a Cyclops is from Babylonian art, and some other ones of note are the Phoenicians and the Greeks. Then we have giants. There are actually 3 different giants in the game that are their own separate thing, but seeing as there's not just a normal giant, I just put them in the giant category. So we have Goliath, which is in one of the DLCs. And there's not really much to it other than he's just a normal giant. But I found out that apparently you can just kill it in one shot if you take a crossbow and shoot it in the eyeball, which is hard to do, but you can one-shot kill it, which I thought was cool. Then we have the ice giant, which is an ice giant. It's just a giant that is got blue skin. He's cold, and they live in cold regions, and they're described as taller than a tree, which is usually true. Sometimes not true though. Depends how old the tree is. And it also has the ability to command sirens, which I thought was interesting. And it really likes human flesh. And it also uses weapons that it takes from people it kills. And then lastly, for the giants, we have the Cloud Giant, which is from the land of Thousand Fables, and is a giant from the clouds. Giants themselves comes from many different folklores and mythologies, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Odyssey, the Bible, and even some English folklore. Next, we have the Neckers. Their name mostly originates from their necks. They're very big necks, and they're very small creatures that attack in groups and are usually seen either by their nests or their lairs. Some of the variants are the warriors, which are larger and have their face painted red. And one notable one was Hagubman, which was an intelligent one that was able to lead a group of them and even was able to set up like traps for people, which was pretty smart. And they get their namesake from the Dutch water spirit, but is mostly based on Irish Foca, which is a goblin-like shapeshifter and trickster. I have this image, which is like from mythology and stuff, but it's pretty basic, so I like this image a bit better. Then we have the Rock Troll, my personal favorite monster in The Witcher. They look like trolls, but with rocks on their backs, and they usually live in mountains where they can blend in with the background. But an interesting thing about them is that they're able to use common speech, which is the language that most people use in The Witcher. So they're able to speak with other people, making it so you can have some encounters with them that don't end with death on one of the sides. And some notable mentions of rock trolls are Wham Wham, who was a magma troll. He lived in a silver cave, and then there was a bunch of people who wanted to take over the cave because it was a silver cave. And so you can choose either to kill him or let him live. Wham Wham is awesome, so I obviously chose to let him live, and then I killed those people. You know, you gotta do what you gotta do. And the other is the ice troll, which lives in more icy regions. And the only main difference between rock trolls and ice trolls is A, they are more blue, they have more ice on their back, and B, they can't actually speak as much common language as normal rock trolls can, mostly from their seclusion in icy mountains. And troll tales have usually been around for forever, but the first written source is from the Book of Edda, where they're described as both dangerous and stupid. They're awesome. There's nothing to hate about these guys. They're amazing. Relicts. That's a relics with a T, not just normal relics. They refer to really old monsters. Some might say a relic without a T. And they existed before the conjunction of spheres. Quick tangent, I guess. The conjunction of spheres. So if you imagine Earth, or I guess more like our normal multiverse. That's right, we're going into one of these. But you imagine us as a sphere. There's a bunch of other spheres of multiverses out there too, with a bunch of other things that happen. Like some of them have magic, some of them have elves, some of them have really dangerous monsters. And basically, I'm not sure 100%, but I'm pretty sure it's just all those spheres kind of overlapped with each other at a certain point. They don't like smash into each other. It's more like they exist in different planes, but they can kind of go through each other. So they all went into the same point, and some things from our world went to theirs, and some things from their world went to ours, including like magic, dangerous beasts, all that. It happened 1,500 years ago from when The Witcher actually takes place, but that's where all these creatures even came from in the first place. So I'm going to start with fiends. They resemble massive deers, and so they have horns. They also have a third eye on their little snout, not actually their forehead, their snout. And they can be used to hypnotize other people into like controlling them, or they just bring them over and kill them. And one of mention is Morwood, which made its home in a ruined village. And the native version of the game, they're called the Bees, which is a synonym for court, which is an evil spirit or demon, which is what they're based on. And then the actual courts are somewhat smaller than the fiends, so like they're like the lower level versions for little weak Geralt, little beginning of the game, but they're still pretty powerful, and they destroy whatever lies in their path, obviously. And one of note is the Howler, which was a more powerful court, and it made its home near a village, not actually in it. And it has the same backstory as the fiends, you know, just based on the court. The Crones, they're also called the Ladies of the Wood. They're 3 witches that no one actually knows how old they are, and they're known to have a sweet tooth for children. And they also like to make people mutilate themselves in exchange for helping them. So some dude will be like, oh man, our crops, they're doing horrible this year. And the 3 witches will come in and be like, hey, we can help you with that. And the dude will be like, oh, sweet. What do I give in service for you helping with my bad crops? And they go, can you cut both of your ears off? And you go, oh, like, what? Yeah, cut your ears off right now and we'll help you. I guess I gotta. So then they cut their ears off. They're real freaky like that. 3 possible places of origin for the Crones are Baba Yaga from Slavic mythology, the 3 weird sisters that defy destiny in Macbeth, as the bestiary mentions them in the play Macbeth, which is the in-universe version of Macbeth, and the 3 sisters of fate from Slavic mythology. The Doppler, also known as changelings, they can turn into any humanoid or animal that they want to, and it's not actually a magical transformation, but a physical one, so spells can't undo their transformation, and it's on a cellular level that they're able to transform. They can also assume most of the skills that a person will have when they transform to them, but they can't actually take the experience that they have. So one of them could turn into a witcher and gain their skill in the sword and, you know, moving around, but they'll never gain the experience that they have from those battles. One Doppler of note was Imp, which after tracking down, you can either choose to free him or kill him. I usually free him though, because, you know, game's game. Gotta make a living out here somehow. And I assume it's based on the changeling from European folklore, where a changeling would be replaced with the kidnapped human child, and they would then pretend to be their kid, but they would never even look like the kid, but they were forced to deal with it anyway. And the devil would place them there. Because the devil's the problem for everything, obviously, not human error at all. But yeah, then we have godlings. They resemble small children with pale skin and bright eyes, and they mostly make mischief for others, but they do try and help people who are living near them because they want to make sure that they're able to live for a long time. They also enjoy playing with other children usually, and sometimes don't really realize when their pranks go a little too far. They're taken from the house spirit of Polish mythology, where the souls of your deceased ancestors combined together to make one mega spirit. Leshen. Leshen's a powerful woodland spirit. They have deer skulls for a head and tree-like limbs. They are pretty territorial, and they use magic to control plants, actually. The variants include the Ancient Leshen, which is just a Leshen that grew old enough to learn more tactics and advanced magic. It's just, you've leveled up a certain point, so now you have to fight a tougher version. And some of note are Kernan, which was an Ancient Leshen that lived in Novigrad, and the Woodland Spirit, which was worshipped by elders in this village. because I don't know, it lived there long enough that they were like, it's our deity, of course, it's protecting us. It wasn't protecting them. And the younger people, which were like, no, it's a monster, so we gotta kill it. Geralt's like, you know, I'm not sure if what I should do. I chose to kill it though, because I ain't gonna let that slide. But it's based on the Slavic Leshy, which is humanoid in shape and can change its liking to whatever it wants. So it can change its shape, it can change its size, whatever it wants to be. And it's portrayed by horns and was known to lead travelers astray and abduct children. And the Leshy was also the basis of legends for this game, and also the Wendigo. But we have the Shaelmar. It's similar to bats. It uses echolocation to find its way around. It's like a mole because it digs through the ground. And armadillos in the way that it rolls up. And it usually lives underground, but sometimes it occasionally leaves, and then people capture it for arena warfare, funnily enough. And some of the notable ones are Shaelmar from the Emperor of Nilfgaard, which was specifically bred to be used in arena fighting, which is a stupid idea because unless you can really control it, which you can't, then you're gonna fucking die. And then the other one is the Monster of Tufo, which was found out to be an old Shaelmar matriarch, which is pretty dangerous. They're based on the Zarla, known from Polish mining areas, and they would appear in mines guarding the natural resources, and they would take the form of an elderly old man with a long gray beard. But they could also take the form of other creatures like cats, dogs, anything they want, really. Then we got Spriggans. They're forest dwellers. They look pretty humanoid except for their Squidward nose, and have mastery over plants and are cousins to the Leshens, actually. One of note is Grotor, who was just a strong Spriggan, and they're taken from the Cornish fairy lore, where apparently they were pretty ugly and guarded buried treasure, specifically buried treasure, not unburied treasure, never that. Why would it be? They could also grow from a small size, because they were pretty small, they were like about yay big, and they can grow to quite a large size. Then we got Sylvans. They're woodland-like creatures. They look like goats and big round men, and they aren't actually that dangerous in retrospect, but they like to play tricks on people and often eat their crops too. Some Sylvans of note include Allgod, who tricked a bunch of people into thinking that he was actually a god living in a cellar, which I don't know how he did that, but you know, props to him for finding out how to trick people to think that he was a god, which is weird. And he also just stole all their food. And then another one was Fugus, who was a servant for the Ladies of the Woods, but you killed him. And the first sort of appearance from Sylvans was from like 6th century BCE. They're satyrs, actually, not Sylvans, but I'm just assuming Sylvans are based off of satyrs. And they were people who were combined, basically upper half was human, and lower half was either horses or goats, and they sometimes had horns too. Then we got the Caretaker. He's technically a demon in the way that it was summoned via ancient ritual, and it was put into servitude by magic to take care of the Von Everett estate, and looks like a large human, but has no face. He's got like a thing of skin on his face, so like from forehead down to lower jaw, like lower lip area, it's just a thing of skin, but you can see the lower lip very clearly indicated on it. I'll show it here, but I'm not really sure how it sees or smells or does anything, but it can do all that stuff. And the only thing that anyone really has anything about the Caretaker for what it's based on is just from its description, which references Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 5, where Hamlet says, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt in your philosophy." This basically just hints that there are way more things in the universe that we can possibly comprehend. So, you know, why bother? And ending this section off, we have the Wicked Witch. looks like an old lady, hanging nose. There's that Squidward nose again. She loves to eat people and is particularly fond of eating children. And it's based on the German fairy tale for Hansel and Gretel, where the witch tries to eat children. Specters. They are creatures that generally haunt cemeteries and crypts, but can be tethered to either a place or a person. And they're people with unfinished business, so they're a ghost. I'm going to start off with the Barghest, which is actually just a ghost dog, and it attacks people in packs. And it's based off of most likely the Hellhound from Northern England folklore. When a Barghest appears after like a funeral or a foggy night, it omens death and bad luck. Then we have the Banshee. They're female spirits, and they don't specifically go their way to hurt people, but are usually seen as a terrible omen, so they're killed for that. Some banshees of note are Daphne's Wraith, which can be dealt with peacefully or aggressively. Longlocks, which is actually based off of Rapunzel, and unlike the story of Rapunzel, isn't saved by a prince, and instead hangs herself with her hair. And then lastly, the Phantom of the Amphitheater, which was an actress who was the best, but then another actress who was jealous killed her, and so she came back to life and then haunted the theater, so no one was able to use it. And they're most likely based on the Banshees from 8th century, which was basically a woman who would sing a sorrowful song to lament someone's death, or if you hear a Banshee's cry, it would foretell a family's death, a family member's death. Next we have a Hym, H-Y-M, not H-I-M. He's not that guy. But Hyms are dangerous demons that feed on like a target's guilt. So they latch onto you and they just feed on your guilt and torment you until you die. And the only way to get rid of it, I believe, is if you die or if you trick it to going to another person. And the only thing that really relates to a Hym is a Polish Mora, where it influences your dreams, making them horrific, and then drains you of your energy, plus drains you of the energy the day after as well. Then we have the Ethereal, which is a demon-like nightmare creature that takes on the form of others and twists it into the fear of another, and also takes on the skills of those who they imitate. And I'm pretty sure it's probably just the same as a Hym in terms of background. Then looking at the Noonwraith, they're ghosts that stay close to where they died, and are usually those who have died violently, before or directly after their wedding. And guess what? They're visible at noon. Some notable ones are the White Lady, who killed herself after abandoning her wedding for unknown reasons, and the Devil by the Well, who was a young lady who died in a well before her wedding. And in Polish folklore, Lady Midday, or the Noon Witch, is a figure that roamed like fields, scaring children away from crops, and was said to bring madness, and was how they explained heat stroke. Then we have the Night Wraith, which is the antithesis to the Noon Wraith. They don't only appear at night, weirdly enough, they actually appear through all times, but they're just stronger at night, and they usually live in rural areas where they died. A notable Night Wraith is Jenny of the Woods, who was a powerful Night Wraith and haunted some fields. And the proper translation of Night Wraith, like when it's taken from Polish and then properly translated into English, is actually Midnight Wraith, which would make it the counterpart to the Noon Wraith, because, 12 and 12. The Wraith, they're usually normal ghosts that appear near cemeteries or homes that they lived in when they were alive, and they don't have any memories of such times, and they only really have hatred for anyone who's actually living. Some variants and notable ones are the Penitent, who will only haunt people who have done bad deeds, and the Wraith from the Painting, which is what remained of Iris von Everick and was tied to the world via emotion rather than a physical object, which is very rare in a Wraith's case because they usually are tied to a physical object, either their body or something that they held onto in life. And if the Noon and Night Wraiths were special Wraiths, I assume the Wraith is just like the normal Wraith and the normal version of them. Then looking at the Plague Maiden, These specters usually take the appearance of an ill woman that have many diseases. They have like bolses on them, rats around them, that sort of thing. And they're usually the personification of disease. And they are based on the Norwegian Pesta, which was the personification of the Black Death at the time, and was depicted as an old pale woman bringing diseases wherever she would go. Usually hunched over too, with a little walking cane. Classic old lady who brings omens. Then we have the red miasmal. This one was a bit harder for me to figure out, but while a plague maiden was once human, the red miasmal is actually just an evil force brought about by the suffering of plague victims and is extremely destructive. So it's like everyone's bad thoughts. It's like Jujutsu Kaisen's cursed spirits. Everyone just combined all their emotions and then it made the red miasmal. And so I was trying to figure out what it was actually based on until I had like a Jimmy Neutron brain blast moment. And I was like, oh my god. The red miasmal is literally just a synonym for the Black Death, because it's like red and then goes to black, and then miasmal, which miasmal usually just means decomposing or like dying land. It's replaced with death. So there's the explanation. The Umbra. It's a pretty sick specter, actually. It's an invisible one that takes on the form of something tied to their life. So the one you find is a horse, because it's a knight who killed his horse in a horrific way. And so he's got to repent for that shit. And it can only be seen through powerful hallucinogenics, which I'm totally down with. And I couldn't actually find anything that was related to Umbras on what they're based on or anything. So look at these cool ass horses that I found. Vampires. They're creatures that thrive on blood to enrich themselves, not survive. Some of them don't need them to survive. It just makes them stronger usually. And you're probably thinking, doesn't all these creatures eat blood technically? No. All these creatures eat flesh. These ones don't need flesh, they just need blood. We got the Bruxa. It's a powerful vampire. Takes the appearance of like a dark-haired human, usually a female, and can let out a shriek that can send you flying across the room. One Bruxa of note is the Bruxa of Corvo Bianco, and despite Geralt actually just wanting to talk to the Bruxa for some answers, it's like, no, I want to fight you. So you fight it and kill it. And Bruxa means witch in Portuguese, and Bruxa is also a vampire in Portuguese folklore. Then we got the Alp. It looks like a Bruxa, but is weaker and prefer to eat things that are sleeping. So they usually put their targets to sleep by injecting them with a substance that gives them nightmares as well. And it's loosely based on German folklore, where Alps are vampires that attack sleeping girls, and they pranked farms quite a bit too. And while in Witcher, they are all female, in folklore, Alps are actually the males, and Mara are the females. So they got that one wrong. The Fletter. While they are lesser vampires, they aren't stupid or anything, but they do enjoy a good addict every now and then. The Proto-Fletter is a unevolved version of the Fletter, and is much stronger and has a lot of regeneration abilities to it. And in German, Fledermaus means bat, and in Slavic folklore, the Katakiek are winged creatures that are born from the aborted souls of children and are associated with storms. Then we got the Garcane. They're lesser vampires that are able to paralyze opponents with their sight. The Alpha Garcane is a lot stronger than the normal Garcane and can actually command a pack of them. And it also has a powerful venom as well. And it's loosely based on an Australian Aboriginal mythology of the same name for Garcane, and not Arcane the show, although that's a pretty good show as well. Next we have the Higher Vampire. They look human and are able to transform at their will between 3 states, and they don't actually need to drink blood in order to survive, because they are just able to live forever. They're literally immortal. You can chop them up into pieces and they'll still heal. But alcohol does work as alcohol for them, so that'd be the only reason why they'd actually like kill someone, unless they were like under duress, which is just forced to do something against their will. One higher vampire of note is the Beast of Beauclair, or Detlaf van der Eretain, who, in order to get his love back, killed a bunch of people that his abductors wanted them to kill. And I assume higher vampires are mostly based off of Transylvanian Dracula, who was a very charismatic nobleman who could transform into a monster. Then we have the Catacon. They have bat-like traits, but are large and have claws that grow throughout their life, so you can tell how old one is by how long their claws are. And they're one of the only vampire types that are susceptible to the sun. One of note is Gale, which is a Catacon that had grown to acquire the taste for drunken men and really liked shiny jewelry. And Catacon is the Cretan and Rhodian word for vampire. Lastly, we have the Ekamara, which is a lower vampire and a lot more animalistic than other types of vampires. One of note is Sarasati, which was a powerful one that resided in an elven ruin. And they're based on Ekimu, which was a demon from the ancient Sumerian religions. Basically, they were ghosts that were not buried properly and were wind spirits. They were invisible, so you couldn't interact with them really because they were intangible, and they sucked the life out of susceptible and sleeping people. I would say this was an enlightening experience, and you know, I learned a little bit more about Polish folklore, which is nice. Other than that though, this video took too long to make, and I will definitely be doing one of these long projects again because my hubris is too much for me to handle. I guess if you want, let me know in the comments what your favorite monster is in Witcher 3, specifically Witcher 3, no other games. Don't want no one ruining no fun. And if you did notice, I got a green screen recently. I thought it'd be funny, so I bought one without thinking. And do I regret it? No, I do not, because it was funny. And I don't regret anything I ever do. But yes, my next project will either be a Half-Life video or a Metal Gear Solid video, and I have not chosen yet, but I will figure things out as I go. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.